The sky over Europe was painted in steel and smoke, a battlefield where every cloud hid danger. But on this fateful day, Luftwaffe pilots caught sight of something that froze them in awe. A massive American bomber, its silver fuselage gleaming in the sunlight, bristling with guns like a fortress in the clouds. This was no ordinary plane. It radiated menace and power, a floating arsenal that defied all expectations. As their engines roared and the wind whipped around them, the German pilots could hardly believe what they were witnessing. Every instinct screamed to attack, yet every pilot knew the moment would be etched into their minds forever. The air seemed to vibrate with the anticipation of what was about to unfold, and none could predict the horror, or the revelation, that lay ahead. Capturing an enemy plane was a feat nearly as dangerous as aerial combat itself. This particular B-17 had been forced down, a combination of mechanical failure and a lucky twist of fate. For the Germans, it was an unprecedented opportunity to examine, to test, and to understand a weapon that had wreaked havoc on their forces for years. Intelligence reports had hinted at the bomber's durability, but no pilot or engineer had seen one in person, intact and ready for inspection. The Luftwaffe scrambled, engineers and flight crews converging on the airfield with equal parts fear and fascination. They knew that studying this bomber could unlock secrets that might shift the balance of the skies, yet a lingering tension whispered that some things were meant to be feared, not understood. Stepping closer to the B-17, the Luftwaffe team marveled at its design. Every inch of the fuselage was reinforced. Every turret seemed poised to fire with deadly precision. Twin 50-caliber guns protruded from every side, and the cockpit, loaded with dials and instruments, suggested a machine that thought for itself in combat. The bomber's massive engines exhaled heat like dragons, promising relentless power and endurance that German designers could only dream of matching. It was not just a plane, it was a fortress in the air, and the men studying it felt a mixture of professional curiosity and deep unease. How could any single aircraft withstand such punishment and continue flying? The answer, they would soon learn, would defy everything they believed about aviation. As the engineers and pilots prepared for the first test flight, a chilling realization settled over them. This was no ordinary experiment. The plane beneath their hands carried the weight of technological mastery, a lethal testament to American ingenuity. They climbed aboard, engines thrumming, hearts racing, and the ground crew held their breath. The controls felt alien, yet instinctively they understood that what they were about to witness would be extraordinary. Every eye was fixed on the horizon, every nerve taut with anticipation. The moment they released the brakes, the B-17 surged forward, and in that instant, everything the Luftwaffe thought they knew about air combat would be challenged. What they discovered next would haunt their reports and shake their understanding of firepower forever. The engines of the captured B-17 thundered to life, shaking the airfield as if the very ground feared its roar. The Luftwaffe pilots gripped the controls, eyes wide with a mix of awe and dread. This was no mere aircraft. It was a leviathan, a behemoth that seemed alive with anticipation. As the massive plane rolled down the runway, the pilots felt a force unlike any other, a raw, unrelenting power threatening to throw them from their seats. Every lever, every dial screamed complexity and precision. The hum of the engines became a war chant, echoing a warning. Whoever dared to master this beast would face both glory and terror. And in that moment, as the wheels lifted from the ground, the true nature of its unstoppable strength became undeniable. Once airborne, the B-17 revealed its astonishing resilience. The Luftwaffe pilots fought to control a plane that seemed almost to resist them, yet responded with precision when pushed correctly. Its massive engines provided speed and endurance beyond anything in the German arsenal, while the fuselage, built to endure punishment, seemed to shrug off turbulence as if mocking the pilot's struggle. Every turn, every climb was a test of skill and nerve. Instruments flickered and controls resisted at first, but gradually the pilots began to comprehend the machine's logic. They realized that this was a plane designed not just to fly, but to survive, to fight, and to dominate the skies. And as they pushed it higher, a creeping realization settled over them. This plane's true power was not just in its guns or engines, it was in the combination of every single element, working flawlessly under impossible stress. Sweat beaded on their foreheads as the Luftwaffe crew realized the stakes. Any miscalculation could be fatal, yet hesitation was impossible. Every barrel of gun and inch of wing seemed to taunt them, whispering of battles they had only dreamed of surviving. They felt both fear and admiration, the terrifying thrill of standing face to face with a machine built to destroy them. The B-17 seemed almost sentient, responding to their commands with a will of its own. With every maneuver, the pilots grew more awed and more unnerved. This was not a machine that could be tamed quickly. It demanded respect, obedience, and courage. And as they looped and banked, the shadow of the bomber's deadly potential loomed over them, threatening to eclipse every notion of superiority they had held. As the flight neared its climax, the pilots glimpsed something chilling. The B-17's defensive firepower could strike from angles they hadn't imagined. Each turret, each gun position, seemed poised to anticipate every move, a silent warning that even if captured, this plane remained a predator in the sky. The Luftwaffe crew fought to keep control, hearts pounding with adrenaline and fear. They knew that what they were witnessing would change their understanding of air combat forever. And as they finally descended for landing, a haunting truth settled in their minds. No German aircraft, no matter how advanced, had ever matched this combination of endurance, power, and lethality. The captured B-17 had revealed its secret, and it was more terrifying than they had dared to imagine. What came next would test every lesson they had ever learned about aerial warfare, and the world would never see the skies the same way again. The Luftwaffe pilots thought they had prepared for the B-17's size and speed, but nothing had prepared them for its defensive firepower. As they circled above the airfield, the German engineers watched in awe and terror while inspecting the plane's gun positions. Twin 50-caliber machine guns sprouted from every turret, each one capable of unleashing a hailstorm of lead at unimaginable speeds. The pilots imagined what it would be like to face this beast in combat. A single B-17 could turn the sky into a deadly maze, every angle covered, every approach punished. And as the shadows of the gun mounts stretched across the fuselage in the morning light, the chilling thought settled in. This machine was a fortress in the air, and no ordinary plane could survive a direct encounter with it. Moving from turret to turret, the Luftwaffe engineers meticulously cataloged the bomber's firepower. The tail guns, the chin turret, the top and side positions, each strategically placed to create overlapping fields of fire. Every gun was mechanically precise, capable of tracking targets independently while maintaining devastating accuracy. The plane's designers had clearly thought of every possible angle of attack, every evasive maneuver an enemy might attempt. Watching the defensive turrets in motion, even on the ground, the German team felt a growing dread. It was a terrifying revelation. They were not just examining an aircraft, they were witnessing a machine designed to survive annihilation itself. The B-17 was more than a bomber. It was a skybound citadel. Pilots who had faced B-17s in combat nodded silently as they realized the truth. This was why so many of their comrades had fallen in previous air battles. The concentration of guns, the interlocking defensive arcs, and the sheer resilience of the bomber created an almost mythical reputation. Every engineer and crew member on the Luftwaffe team felt the weight of this realization pressing on them. Fear mixed with fascination, admiration and horror intertwined. This was not just a plane, they were in the presence of perfection in a form meant for destruction. And as they imagined the chaos it could unleash on their own forces, a chilling question formed in every mind. Could any German plane hope to match this defensive network? As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the captured B-17, the crew prepared for a live test of its gun systems. Even on the ground with no enemy in sight, the bomber radiated lethal potential. Each turret's swivel, each calculated recoil was a silent declaration. This plane was built to survive, to punish, and to dominate the skies. The Luftwaffe team held their breath, knowing that once they fired these guns, they would witness a force that could rewrite everything they thought they knew about aerial combat. And deep down, a single terrifying thought settled in. Whatever lessons they learned today would stay with them forever, and the world above would never be the same again. As the Luftwaffe pilots climbed into the cockpit, a tense silence fell over the airfield. The engines of the B-17 rumbled like thunder, promising raw, unyielding power. Even before takeoff, it was clear this was no ordinary bomber. Every German pilot knew the stories of planes breaking down mid-mission, of engines faltering under pressure, but this B-17 radiated confidence, as if daring anyone to challenge it. The hum of the four massive engines reverberated through the metal frame, a living heartbeat that hinted at something extraordinary. And as they taxied toward the runway, the pilots exchanged uneasy glances. This was a machine that could endure anything the sky threw at it, and perhaps outlast the pilots themselves. Once airborne, the B-17 revealed its legendary endurance. The engines roared without faltering, even under extreme maneuvers and high altitudes. The German engineers scribbled notes furiously, noting the redundancy, precision, and sheer power behind each propeller. This plane could fly longer, higher, and harder than anything in the Luftwaffe's inventory. Turbulence, stress, and the rough handling by curious pilots seemed only to invigorate it. The realization dawned. The Americans had built more than a bomber. They had created a machine capable of sustaining itself through relentless punishment, a testament to mechanical genius that defied expectation. Every gear, every piston, every roaring engine was a proof of endurance unmatched by anything the Germans had ever flown. As they climbed higher, a palpable tension filled the cockpit. Pilots and engineers alike were struck by a mix of fear and awe. They had trained for war, faced enemy aircraft, and survived flak that shredded hundreds of planes. But here, in this captured B-17, they confronted a different kind of terror. Perfection. Its engines never wavered, its systems never faltered, and its sheer size and weight seemed to inspire confidence even in the most nervous pilot. Yet that confidence was tempered by dread. Every flight over Europe had tested the limits of man and machine, but this bomber made them question everything they thought they knew about reliability. It was as if the plane itself was whispering, "You are in my world now." As the test flight drew to a close, the pilots descended toward the airfield, hearts pounding from adrenaline and disbelief. The B-17's engines still hummed flawlessly, as though mocking every plane Germany had ever built. The crew exchanged silent, stunned glances. They had witnessed endurance the likes of which no Luftwaffe aircraft could hope to match. And as the massive bomber touched down with a precision that seemed almost alive, a lingering fear took root. They knew that what they had experienced was only the beginning. The captured B-17 was not just powerful, it was a revelation, a harbinger of lessons that would haunt every pilot who dared to face it. What came next would challenge their understanding of aerial combat even further. The B-17 loomed above the airfield like a silver titan, wings stretching wider than anything the Luftwaffe pilots had ever flown. As they gripped the controls, a shiver of both fear and excitement ran down their spines. Could such a massive machine truly respond to human commands? The answer came immediately. The bomber reacted with surprising agility, yet every motion reminded them of the consequences of error. A slight overcorrection could send it skimming dangerously close to disaster. And as the engines roared and the plane banked over the horizon, the pilots realized that mastering this behemoth would require every ounce of skill and nerve they possessed. Each maneuver was a delicate dance with a force that refused to be tamed. Flying the B-17 revealed a startling paradox. Though massive and heavy, the bomber was remarkably responsive when handled correctly. Its control surfaces were precise, its balance impeccable, but every adjustment demanded respect. Luftwaffe engineers meticulously noted the hydraulics, ailerons, and control linkages, mechanisms that allowed such a large aircraft to maneuver with deadly efficiency. Yet for the pilots, there was no time to admire the engineering. Every twist, climb, and dive tested their instincts, forcing them to fight simultaneously against the plane's sheer mass and the temptation to push it too hard. The B-17's design revealed both genius and danger in equal measure, a mechanical masterpiece that demanded reverence. As they banked sharply, the pilots felt their stomachs drop and adrenaline spike. Fear and awe intermingled with every turn. For Luftwaffe veterans accustomed to nimble Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs, the B-17 was a revelation, a plane that could shrug off punishment, yet respond with a deadly grace that defied intuition. Each maneuver reminded them of the countless Allied crews who had flown these bombers under fire and survived. The realization hit hard. This was not merely a test flight. It was a lesson in humility and terror. The sky itself seemed smaller beneath the bomber's wings, and every heartbeat carried the echo of its power. As they began their descent, the pilots could not shake the sense of awe mixed with dread. This massive flying fortress had revealed a terrifying truth. It could move, react, and fight with a level of control that defied expectation. Their minds raced, imagining what it could do under fire, in a battle where every turret, every engine, every maneuver combined into a single, unstoppable force. The Luftwaffe crew landed the plane safely, but the haunting thought lingered. No German aircraft could match this combination of power and precision. And as they disembarked, a quiet tension gripped them. What they had seen today was only the beginning of revelations that would shake every understanding of aerial warfare. As the pilots climbed out of the cockpit, sweat still dripping and hearts hammering, a profound silence fell over the airfield. They were not speaking of engines, turrets, or wings. They were speaking of something far more unsettling, the presence of raw, uncompromising power. The B-17 had not just been a machine to fly. It had been a force to reckon with, a reminder of human ingenuity fused with lethal purpose. Fear mixed with awe in ways they had never experienced. Each man felt the weight of what they had seen, a silent understanding passing between them. This was not merely a bomber. This was a living embodiment of dominance in the sky, and it demanded respect the way a predator commands the attention of every prey it surveys. Luftwaffe veterans recalled countless battles against Allied formations, yet none had left such a lasting imprint on the mind. The stories, the briefings, the intelligence reports, they had all hinted at the B-17's resilience and defensive might, but nothing could compare to first-hand experience. Engineers and pilots alike felt a mix of admiration and unease. They understood that the Americans had crafted a plane that could survive punishment, strike back with precision, and outlast virtually every opponent. Even now, standing near the massive fuselage, its gleaming skin scarred yet unbowed, the team could feel the psychological grip the plane had exerted. It was a machine designed not just to fight, but to intimidate. A floating fortress that haunted the imagination as much as it dominated the skies. Fear, respect, and disbelief intermingled in the cockpit and on the ground. Pilots who had been in countless engagements found themselves humbled. Their pride subdued by the sheer mastery evident in every rivet, every turret, every engine of the B-17. They had thought they understood aerial warfare. Now they realized their knowledge was incomplete. The bomber did not simply exist in space, it dominated it. The experience left them shaken yet fascinated. A strange exhilaration coursed through them, for they had glimpsed something extraordinary, something terrifyingly effective. And deep within, a quiet dread took root. The world had changed, and the rules of the air would never be the same again. As the day ended and the sun sank behind distant hills, the B-17 rested silently, yet its presence remained electrifying. The Luftwaffe crew could not shake the feeling that this plane had left an indelible mark on them, a reminder of the heights and horrors of human innovation. They would talk about it in hushed tones, study it in painstaking detail, and wonder at the audacity of its designers. And as night fell, the shadow of what they had witnessed lingered. The B-17 was more than a machine. It was a revelation, a weapon that could inspire fear across nations, and a challenge to every pilot who dared take to the skies. What they learned here would shape their understanding of war forever, and the air above Europe would never feel safe again. The moment had arrived. The Luftwaffe crew held their breath as the B-17's engines roared to life, not just for flight, but for a demonstration of its full defensive might. They had seen the turrets on the ground, but nothing compared to witnessing them in motion. As the bomber rolled into the sky, the guns came alive, swiveling, tracking, and firing in a terrifyingly coordinated dance. Even in a controlled test, the sound was deafening, the recoil brutal, and the spray of rounds precise beyond belief. Each observer's heart raced. They were witnessing power that could shred entire formations of fighters with terrifying efficiency. And yet, the most chilling thought remained unspoken. This was only a preview of what the B-17 could do in battle. The Luftwaffe engineers studied every turret and gun as if decoding an alien language. The tail guns could track enemies approaching from behind with uncanny accuracy. The side and top turrets could cover blind spots with relentless precision. Even the chin turret, often overlooked in intelligence reports, fired with deadly efficiency. The synchronization between gunners, the mechanical design, and the defensive arcs created a network of fire so advanced that it seemed almost sentient. As rounds zipped through the air, the German team realized the terrifying truth. Attacking this plane head-on or from any angle would be a near-impossible task. Each test shot reinforced their growing sense of awe and dread. Pilots who had faced B-17 formations over Europe nodded grimly. They understood now why so many of their comrades had been shot down, why so many missions had ended in disaster. The defensive firepower was not just overwhelming. It was psychologically crushing. Observers on the ground flinched with each simulated burst, feeling the invisible reach of the bombers' guns as if they were being fired at them. Fear and admiration collided in their minds. This was a machine that commanded the skies with brutal authority, and even when tested under controlled conditions, it left a lasting mark on those who watched. A silent, unshakable terror had taken root. As the test flight ended and the B-17 touched down smoothly, the Luftwaffe team could barely speak. They had seen its power, felt its precision, and understood the nightmare it would unleash in actual combat. But the real horror and fascination was yet to come. The bomber had revealed its defensive genius, but what would they discover when its full potential was unleashed in the skies? And deep in the minds of every German pilot present, a chilling question lingered. Could any aircraft, any tactic, possibly hope to survive the fury of a B-17's guns in a real battle? The next revelation would push their understanding of air warfare even further. The Luftwaffe pilots could hardly believe what was about to happen. A captured B-17, massive and heavily armed, would now face a series of mock attacks by some of Germany's finest fighter pilots. The airfield buzzed with tension. Engines roared, propellers sliced the air, and every man's nerves tightened. As the B-17 lifted into the clouds, it seemed almost serene. A silver fortress poised against the tiny, agile fighters buzzing like hornets. Everyone held their breath. This was no ordinary drill. What they were about to witness would challenge everything they believed about the limits of size, speed, and firepower in the sky. As the fighters circled and dove, the B-17 responded with a surprising agility that left observers stunned. Its massive frame banked and adjusted with uncanny precision, the engine sustaining momentum that seemed impossible. Meanwhile, the defensive guns tracked the attackers flawlessly, forcing the fighters to maneuver unpredictably. Engineers scribbled frantically, noting every angle, every reaction, and every gun response. It was a revelation. The B-17 was not just a lumbering behemoth. It was a perfectly coordinated system of attack and defense, designed to survive and repel even the most skilled opponents. The fighter pilots, seasoned and fearless, felt an unfamiliar surge of anxiety. Every approach they attempted was met with precise counteraction, each dive and loop forcing them further from their target. Even in a controlled exercise, the sheer effectiveness of the B-17's defense created a palpable tension. On the ground, engineers and observers exchanged silent glances of awe and disbelief. The psychological impact was immediate. This plane did not simply fly. It dominated, intimidated, and punished anyone daring to challenge it. And as the mock engagement continued, a chilling realization took hold. This was the weapon that had terrified Allied skies, and now its secrets were terrifying even its captors. As the exercise concluded and the B-17 glided back to the airfield, engines still thrumming with relentless power, the Luftwaffe crew was left in stunned silence. The captured bomber had not only survived every simulated attack, it had effectively controlled the engagement, dictating the battle from start to finish. Every pilot, every engineer, knew that what they had witnessed was extraordinary, almost otherworldly. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the bomber's massive shadow over the tarmac, a haunting thought lingered in their minds. If this plane could dominate in a controlled test, what horrors would it unleash in real combat? The next revelation promised to be even more unsettling. As the B-17 rolled to a stop, Luftwaffe engineers approached with a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. Beneath the gleaming silver fuselage lay a secret they had long suspected, but never fully appreciated: armor and structural design that defied logic. Every panel, every beam, every rivet seemed calculated to absorb punishment that would cripple any other aircraft. They ran their hands along the thick metal skin, imagining the bullets, flak, and shrapnel it had survived in actual combat. The sheer scale of resilience sent a shiver down their spines. How could a machine this massive remain aloft after enduring such relentless attacks? The answer would reveal the terrifying genius of American engineering. Meticulously, the engineers examined the fuselage and wings, noting the layers of armor and reinforced framing. Critical systems were shielded, ammunition storage designed to prevent catastrophic explosions, and structural joints engineered to endure stress that would shatter lesser designs. Every element of the plane contributed to survivability, not just firepower. They could almost see the blueprint of a machine built to shrug off disaster, almost taunting anyone who dared challenge it. The B-17's design combined brute strength with precision engineering, a combination that made it one of the most durable aircraft ever built. Even the engineers, seasoned veterans of war production, could not hide their astonishment. The psychological weight of the B-17's armor sank in quickly. Pilots had flown against these planes for years, yet seeing it up close, intact, and untouched by combat scars drove home a chilling reality. Few, if any, German planes could survive direct hits from this bomber. Fear, respect, and disbelief intermingled as they circled the aircraft, noting its resilience from every angle. The realization was unavoidable. The B-17 was more than a plane. It was a fortress. And for the Luftwaffe, understanding this meant confronting the uncomfortable truth that their enemies had created something that might never be matched in speed, durability, or lethality. As they stepped back and studied the bomber from a distance, the shadows of its wings stretching across the airfield, a quiet awe settled over the team. This was not merely a plane to be studied, it was a revelation, a mechanical marvel that defied expectations. Every rivet, every armored panel whispered stories of resilience and domination in battle. And deep in the minds of every Luftwaffe observer, a silent fear lingered. If this plane could survive everything thrown at it, what horrors might it unleash against German forces in full combat? The next test promised to reveal even more secrets, secrets that would shake their understanding of aerial warfare to its core.